for all the important reasons that we do it. So that is sort of my global introduction. And I welcome any thoughts or questions you have before I sort of transition into a matter of anthropology. And I won't get too deeply into the science, but if you guys are ready for a little anthropology, I would like to have all of your listeners now imagine they're watching a nature show, and it's about the animals on the African savanna, and they're observing rather a herd of impala, or a troop of chimpanzee, or a pride of lions. Imagine even it's a pod of dolphins or a pod of whales in the South Pacific. Imagine watching any mammals in the state of nature, and you will observe one very interesting thing. Among mammals, juveniles never outnumber adults in natural social settings. You do not see one adult elephant and 10 or 20 juvenile elephants. Observe a pride of lion. You will see a number of adult lions and 1 or 2 cubs. Same with dolphins and whales. When you look at a pod of whales or dolphins, you see a bunch of adults and 1 or 2 juveniles. In the state of nature, among mammals, juveniles do not outnumber adults. And there are lots of conclusions we can draw, some speculative, some less speculative, but we can infer that juvenile mammals are not designed optimally to function optimally in an environment where juveniles outnumber adults. And all we have to do is observe the nature around us. What is interesting to me is this reality, this natural ratio of juveniles to adults is ignored when children begin to struggle at school or other social settings. And what's fascinating is if you observe a child who is struggling in an environment where juveniles outnumber adults, and you remove that child from that environment, and you put that child into an environment where there's more adults than juveniles, the maladaptive behavior goes away. Yet we tend to ignore this reality that a lot of the maladaptive behavior we observe on the part of children, teens, and even young adults is really a function of this unnatural ratio of juveniles to adults. And what tends to happen is the juvenile human, their behavior is pathologized. It's, oh, this child is misbehaving, there's something wrong with this child, they're not learning, they don't know how to be a good student. And we make assumptions about the child based on really characteristics of the environment. All of us have observed, remove that child from that environment and put them into an environment where that's more natural, where there's a more natural ratio of adults to juveniles. Suddenly, this child is learning. Suddenly, they are behaving optimally.
I'd like to pause you on that for a second because you're really speaking our language right now. As behavior analysts, we know that there's over 100 years of research to support that the environment is what shapes behavior. It's what is the most, people try to change the individual, but in order to change the individual, you have to change the environment. When we get called in to work on the behavior of the student, it's like people understand it almost always requires that environment, which the adults are the most important part of that environment, their behavior is going to need to change. And to your point as well, if you put a bunch of children together, they're going to learn best, and their behavior is going to be shaped up pretty quickly as they assimilate to that culture by the behaviors of their peers. So, so far, I really, like where you're going with this.
Well, thank you so much. And Drew, I welcome your thoughts and input too. Part of what I love in conversations like this is sharing ideas and pulling ideas together.
Yeah, it's actually, this came up in a few conversations I've had in the past couple of weeks, is you cannot treat problem behavior in a problem environment. And you're talking exactly about a problem environment that the kids are in, the students are in.
Exactly. So let's now that we sort of laid down the baseline for this problem, let's now discuss really the tragic side of this. And here's the tragic side. You can have a bright, well-meaning, inquisitive kid who can do well, wants to do well, tries to do well, but they're in an environment where there's more juveniles than adults. They begin to exhibit maladaptive behavior. They're identified as the problem. The child who can't learn, the child who misbehaves, the child who doesn't belong.